I swear I'm going to buy a tent, and we're just going to have the scoreboard inside of the tent.
You think he's joking, but we are planning
I am
that.
not even joking.
We should start thinking about somebody that can act as security outside the tent.
Hi, this is Nate Sexton, and you're listening to Unstable Discourse.
All right, guys, welcome in to episode 1 of Unstable Discourse. I'm Alex Seminary of Disc Golf Chicago. I'm here with Sean Callahan of Delwood Disc Golf. Sean.
What up, y'all?
And Ryan Fancher of Unstable Disc Golf Gear. Ryan.
Present.
Thank you for that. Is that going to be a running... we're going to do that every episode now.
Every episode. Yep.
Beautiful. So the first episode, this is the first official episode, and we're going to get into something we like to call the Tourney Journey, which basically means we're going to go through a checklist of everything you would need to know if you were going to put on a tournament. From concept to execution, there is probably a lot more involved in that process than a lot of people realize. So we're going to walk you guys through that, and we have come up with the name Tourney Journey. I'm not quite sure. You guys have both said you're like into the name, but I can't tell.
Well, because it sounds to me like turkey jerky, and although turkey jerky is probably on the lower end of the jerky scale, still a fan.
Love the name completely. I love Tourney Journey.
Yeah,
cool.
It's great. It's
well, we're sticking. It's happening. We're in it.
Done.
Okay, so before we get into the heart of that subject, we're going to get into the very first segment, which we're calling Fired Up. And that's what we're going to talk about, what we are most excited about right now in the disc golf world. Sean, what are you most fired up about?
For 4 hours today, I got to watch coverage from 3 different production companies down at Las Vegas Challenge. It was amazing. GK Pro, we've got Gatekeeper and Central Coast all putting out content. Not exactly next day, but a ton of content, 2 rounds per production company. So I am super excited to finally be watching tournament coverage in 2020.
Yeah, I accidentally kind of came up knowing that there were tournaments, but forgetting that I could go to YouTube and watch that. And then it popped up, and there was an existential moment for me. Like, whoa. Like,
it's here.
Happening.
It's here.
Yeah.
It's back.
Yeah, it was great. So,
Ryan, what are you fired up about?
Just the weather. Actually, today we happened across, 55 and sunny, marginal wind. Me and the boys got to play disc golf this morning, which is a rarity at best lately. I broke out the phone and turned on MLB and watched some Cactus League Mariners play. And like those 3 things combined with the weather and playing disc golf and baseball just makes me feel like it's here, it's happening, it's coming, and I'm over the moon right now about that. So,
yeah, you kind of stole mine. I was going to say the weather and the general vibe of this season, but
and I know it's not going to last because 3 days from now we're going to get 4 inches of snow, and it's going to go back to the most ridiculous
Chicago third winter. Then we'll get some more nice weather. Then it'll be Chicago fourth winter.
Exactly, and then it'll get warm, and then the weekend of our club challenge, it will just rain down.
You jinxed it. I was going to say it's going to be perfect.
But hopefully, because I said that, it will not. But that's usually what happens. But yeah, for this moment right now, it couldn't be better.
Playing with the juju, man.
That's right.
You're messing up the juge, dog.
Me and Ja. He owes us.
Ja will provide.
He will provide, and he better provide because...
well, I'm taking the cheap answer of I'm fired up about this podcast.
It's not cheap.
I know it's cheating, but I don't care. There's a lot of stuff to be excited about right now, but literally nothing is more exciting to me than this right now. It's something I think we've all talked about for a while. And
Sean and I have talked about doing this for years.
Yep.
Like, I
for
remember...
you, it's a no-brainer. You're the audio engineer. I mean, it's
you.
I'm so surprised you haven't started this sooner.
I know, it's crazy. I'm breaking out equipment, microphones, audio interfaces, preamps from 12, 15 years ago that I haven't touched, and it's super exciting for me to do. But just bring the content to the people and just doing it and finally realizing that this is going to happen is awesome.
Part 2 of my fired up is that Alex got Ryan to get off of his rear and do this.
Yeah,
because I've been trying to get him to do it for 5 years.
Yeah.
Dude, if you need somebody to get excited about something or to do something, that's where I thrive.
Yeah, I
can
cannot.
get people to get into an idea.
I totally want to do a lot of things.
You got a full plate.
I need the hype man. Yeah, that's it.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do a quick calendar rundown of events that are coming up that you guys should probably know about. We're going to look at the next 3 months, anything that's worth paying attention to, things you guys can look into. Sean, can you give us a look at what's coming up?
Yes, sir. So, starting off in March, Saturday the 14th, we've got the Old Oak Spring Warm-Up. That is an unsanctioned event put on by myself, Thor Batchelor, Leo Borowski, and Ryan Fancher. It is at Old Oak Ball Golf Course in Homer Glen. It is going to be a ton of fun. It sold out pretty quick. I think we've got 200 people signed up in 10 divisions or so. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It's crazy. Yeah, the concept for this tournament came out, it was thought up a year ago. We'll probably get into that a little bit later, but it's not just a pop-up tournament just for something to do. Like, there's a lot of background behind this, and it's going to be a ton of fun, and it's going to move a lot of things forward that is going to help the whole area.
Yeah, so. Thor had been working with getting something over there for a while, and then
long time. Finally
got a meeting, and that's when I came in. This is going back a few months, and landed on a date, and sold out. Going to be a blast.
Awesome.
Yeah. 2 weekends after that, on the 28th, Saturday, we've got Fraction Run Cup 2 here at Delwood Park. We are in the second year of the Greater Joliet Tour Series, so we decided to make the events standalone events and name them. So Fraction Run Cup, for those of you that are unfamiliar, Fraction Run is the name of the creek in Delwood. So when you lose your 2015 Sexton Firebird in the creek, it is the Fraction Run that is taking it from you.
A lot of people still don't, even though they've played the events.
Yeah,
it's a cool name, but why? Well, there you go.
That's the reason.
I wondered. I was like, I'm sure there's a good reason behind it, but I had no idea.
Yep.
Saturday, April 18th, we've got Battle at Bush Park 2. That is also another really cool name. So before it was West Park, it was owned by an old farmer, last name of Bush. It was Bush Park. It was also a zoo back in the day. West Park was. So we are going to be switching that up a little bit and adding some alt pins and using some of the B pins on a couple of the holes, using some long tees. So it's going to toughen up West Park a little bit. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we think it needs a little toughening up for a tournament like this, and yeah, it's going to be good.
May 9th and 10th, something I'm really excited about, something that I put on personally, is King of the Canyons. We're in our third year. It is an unsanctioned event. It is an invite-only event. First year, we had 16 guys. We started off really small. It's a bracket style where only the top 50% of the field move on. Each round, the layout changes. Last year, we had 39 guys, and this year, I'm kind of focusing more on local players. I've got 80, it's getting close to like 90 people on the invite list. And rather than doing waves of invites, I'm doing kind of all at once, 64 spots, come and grab them before they're gone type of a thing. So really excited about that. There's a lot of money on the line. Can't wait for King of the Canyons. It's a blast.
That's great. Last year we invited a ton of pros, and they're starting the tour season. It's tough for them to get out here. Yeah. Some were able to make it. Yeah. A lot weren't. And
shout out to Robert McCall.
Yeah, he's the best. But it's really tough for these guys to come out here. Even though the purse is actually a lot better than some of the tournaments they're traveling to, which, it's a no-brainer for us. Like,
what did the purse look like last year?
They split because they went into a three-way playoff and they decided to chop it. They each took home like $2,200.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is far and away like the biggest purse we've had.
Like all of them said that was the most money they had ever made playing disc golf. I was like, all right, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really great.
So we add 3,000 to the purse. So it's a pretty big. That's more added cash than an A tier. So an A tier requirement's only 2,000 added cash. We add 3.
There's something else awesome about King of the Canyons that I was hoping you'd mention, which is there was coverage last year by. Was it last year or the year before? The Jomez got involved, didn't they?
No, it was Ryan Nick.
Oh,
Nick
Ryan
Productions.
Nick.
Yep.
Okay. But the coverage that I saw was unbelievable.
Yeah, he's done the final 9 the last 2 years.
Yeah, the caliber of video quality is right up there.
Yeah, he kills it.
Which is why I thought it was Jomez. I was just like, I knew. I just knew it was amazing.
Ryan Nick is the best.
I'm hoping he will do that again.
I already put it on. Well, he's in no matter what he says because I already put it on Disc Golf Center.
Well. Thanks, Ryan, for that because you're in.
So moving on to Saturday, May 23rd, we've got Clay Track Classic 2. This is by far and away my favorite named event that we do in the Greater Joliet Tour Series. It's at Trinity. Trinity is everybody's favorite. I think it's the homie course. It's where everybody hangs out. Clay Track is in reference to before Trinity was a disc golf course. It was a old biker club. And if you know this, you know. But to the left side of hole 10 is a tree line. On the right side of that is all open. That's 10's fairway. On the left side of that, that's where 12's tee box is at. There was an old Clay Track bike racing track there. And when they did that course back in, if I wish I had Thor here to ask, but I want to say it was like 97 or 98, something like that.
Yeah, 96, 97.
There was like all kinds of tires they had to pull from over in that area because that was, the kind of the boundaries of the track, and some old bikes and cars and God knows who else back there, or what else back there. But yeah, Clay Track is by far my favorite name as far as the Greater Joliet Tour Series events.
For sure. Yeah, it's a fantastic name. I'm surprised they got grass to grow even after this long. Like thinking about what that right. was, and it wasn't actually that long ago that they tore it up. Like, when you think of old Clay Track bike race, you're thinking like super old, like 50s, 60s, 70s. Like, no, it was in like 96. That's weird.
Right.
And I don't know how long it had been defunct, but it was still there. Like, that's nuts to me.
Yeah.
In our lifetime.
So, and wrapping up the very last weekend in May, the 30th and 31st, we've got our first B tier of the year. That is Clash at the Canyons 4. There is
Never heard of it.
A lot of people excited about this event.
Just kidding.
We've got some cool things already in the making with that event.
It's never not great. So
it's going to be a ton of fun. As things are ever evolving here at Delwood, the Clash XL layout is going to become the XXL layout. Yes. We're going to do a lot of. I'm gonna make the MPO field cry a little bit. That's kind of the goal with that layout.
Please do 13 long to be.
It won't be 13 long to be. It will be 13 white pad to be, because that plays as the best par 4, I think, and I think that whole field agrees. But yes, it'll be down to that B pin.
I'll cop to not being able to play as many tournaments as I wish I could. I mean, probably a lot of people feel that way, but Clash is one that I just will not miss. Yeah. Like if I had. If my wife was pregnant and I had to, be at the hospital, I'd be like, honey, I need you to understand, it's a Clash.
It's Clash, honey.
Yeah.
Last year I set a alarm so that I knew it was going to sell out immediately.
Yeah.
And I was in the middle of a round and stepping up to a tee pad, and I was like, my alarm went off, and I was like, sorry guys, you're going to have to play this hole without me. I sat down on a bench. I made sure I registered. I got in within 1 minute of the thing opening, and I think there were 20 people ahead of me already. So
cool. Yeah.
That sold
Super
out
quick.
Immediately, right?
Yeah, I mean, by the time our first event happens on the 14th, we will have 4 events that will be live on Disc Golf Scene that will probably be sold out.
Yeah.
By the time the first one happens, just goes to show how much stuff we have going on in our local area.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so that wraps up everything we got coming up in the next 3 months.
Couple of months
through
here.
May.
Yep, through May.
Which seems like an eternity away, but
it's going to go fast.
It's coming up.
It's going to go super quick.
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay. The next little thing we want to get into is a segment that we're calling Local Route, where we take we're just going to shine a little spotlight on people, things, clubs, something that's happening with the people in our scene or an organization in our scene locally that just deserves a shout out. So I'll start. Actually, I'm going to go with you know who deserves a shout out is Circle One, the club.
100% agreed.
I was blown away. They came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, I started seeing Circle One shirts everywhere, and it was how long has this been around?
That I didn't print, and I'm not even.
Who
mad.
are you?
Yeah. And it was right. The people in this club are fiercely loyal, and then I come to find out that they're doing all this great stuff at the Oaks. They've done course improvements. They've made the course more challenging, more interesting. That stuff doesn't happen. It doesn't just happen. It's taking people. It's a coordinated effort, and that doesn't happen unless everybody feels like they're a part of something. So
yeah, there are a lot of clubs that just are a club for no other reason than to play disc golf and remain stagnant in any other way. Yeah. And that's kind of a thing that drives us crazy. But Circle One they're doing it right,
and they're repping hard. They were out at JPPL on Saturday. Everybody had their Circle One shirts, so big shout out to Scott Rangel. Yeah. You got an awesome group of dudes over there in Mokina, so keep it up.
I've not met Scott, but I've heard nothing but good things, and I know that
he's all right.
I know that.
El Chapo, they call him.
Yeah.
Do they?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
awesome. People don't rally behind a leader unless they're a leader, unless they're like a good leader. You can start a club and call yourself the leader of a club, but good things don't really happen unless people see you as a leader they respect, they want to do cool things for. So whatever Scott's doing, shout out to Scott. It's got to be good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
They're running an event. We'll have to look into that date. Maybe as we're doing the show, I'll look into the event of that date. But there is a Circle 1 event at Mokina. I know Delwood will be involved in some facet. I have talked to him. So I will look into that date. We'll shout that out at some point.
Great.
Lauren Lakeberg has been coming to events, I want to say, back all the way to 2010?
I've seen photos from her from forever.
Before my involvement, my deep involvement of the local disc golf scene. So she has been around forever. One of my favorite things all season is the candid moments that she is able to capture. And mind you, this is all on a volunteer basis.
Wow.
You know, she's got... I know that she has worked with some larger events like Ledgestone, but like locally, she just shows up and does her thing, and
Awesome.
She's amazing. She also likes when things land on 11, and she's a numbers gal, and I'm a numbers guy, and she's awesome. So Lauren Lakeberg is definitely my local route shout-out.
Nerds.
She is at the disc golf photographer, right? That's what she's
Correct.
her website?
Yep.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, she's got gobs of photos from all events all over the place, and every one of them is great. And it really, going through the gallery of each event kind of takes you into the event. Like, it's not just photos of what was going on, but like you are in the face of, the MPO player, and you can almost feel what he's thinking before, they make that putt, and it feels like, you're on the edge of your seat. With every photo, I feel like if you weren't at the event, you feel a little bit more involved with what was going on just by looking at the photos. Yeah,
it's immersive. Like, I didn't go to the first Incarcerated, but I saw her pictures, and I felt like I was there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I've talked about it like I was there.
There's taking pictures, and then there's being a photographer, and she is definitely the latter, and it's amazing to look back. I mean, especially for me, like, I am constantly looking back on the year in the photos through Facebook or stuff of hers that I've saved on my phone, and I look back, and it kind of ties it all together and kind of gives me something to shoot for the next year of, like, how do we make 100 of those moments that she captured? It's fantastic.
Yeah. A couple months ago, she recently sent me some links to the galleries because she graciously allows me to use some of her photos for trophies and things like that. And I'm not going to lie, I went through a bunch of them, and it was like the 1st of January, and it's miserable, and you got time before things start to happen again. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to look at what August was like because I forget. Yeah. And you feel like you were at, it was
Remember
warm,
leaves on trees?
Yeah.
Look back at Lauren's photos, and you'll
so good.
have that feeling again.
Yeah. So
I'm going to use the word again, immersive. I mean, it really takes you into, you're there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't already, follow her on Facebook, the Disc Golf Photographer, Instagram, every outlet possible. She does a lot of blogging as well. So
and she's got a lot of photos for sale. And if you think they're great,
support her.
Please
support
support
your
her.
local artist. Please.
Put her stuff on the wall. You're not going to get much better.
Yeah.
You want to keep having nice things. Support the people who are doing nice things.
Your bathroom needs disc golf art.
100%.
My wife says that every day.
I didn't think so. She wants to.
She's thinking it. She wants to say it, I think.
Yeah.
Brian? Local route?
My local route is going to be, all the putting leagues that have been going on over the winter. It kind of brings back the whole thing that I've been saying. Like, this winter's just a huge bummer for me, but all of these clubs and all these organizations are putting these putting leagues on, and it brings you back in. It makes you involved. It gives you, the feeling that, it's winter, but all the guys are around, all the girls are around, it's still disc golf.
The season doesn't end.
It never does, and especially with, the ones that I've been to. Yeah.
It could if it wasn't for people doing this stuff.
Oh, it absolutely could. Yeah. And I'm sure it helps everybody's game, if not putting, but just, that feeling of not taking a break.
Right.
Because I know Sean and I played this morning, and I'll tell you how many putts I missed. Most of them.
All of them.
Yes.
Because we just don't play over the winter. And,
right.
I'm sure that helps tremendously. So
there weren't wacky inflatable guys out on, Highlands baskets. So
maybe that's why I didn't make them. Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I really missed those.
I think you're spot on. Like, of course, it's good to help keep your game going when you're not when you wouldn't be playing otherwise. But surely the thing that people are most excited about when it comes to a putting league is like, I can hang out with the boys. I can get my like
camaraderie.
I can just be a part of the culture
Yep.
and not miss that for 3 months or 4 months or whatever.
Right.
The high fives and the fist bumps and the hugs that I get from all the guys when I see them. It's man. If I didn't have that throughout the winter, Tom, it would be a huge bummer. Yeah. But just to go through these to give you an idea of what's going on. I didn't realize that there was one almost every day of the week until we just looked them up. But
I bet a lot of people don't realize
all
that.
over the Chicagoland
all over
area.
it's crazy. Yeah,
There's
so
no excuse.
Starting, in no particular order, but J-Town does a putting league on Tuesdays at Arrowhead Ales. They've got 3 weeks left, so go support them. Go do it. It's a doubles putting league, I believe. So they've got a point system going on. They've got a ton of people going. It looks like so much fun. I wish I could get there on Tuesdays. I try every week and something comes out, but it looks like so much fun. Of course, you've got the Joliet Prison Putting League. If you haven't heard of that, what are you doing?
You're under a rock. Come on.
Saturday nights, they've got 2 weeks left. There's still plenty of time to have a great time. You got beverages, you got food, you got 108 guys, and girls. Actually, there were more women this last week than there were pros in that division this past week.
Correct.
I saw, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was inspiring. I
So,
saw that.
the mix of players is fantastic there. Also, you got basket cases putting on Thursdays at Blue Island, and that is always a good time with the basket cases guys. It doesn't get much better than that eclectic, crazy,
They are a fun
super
crew.
fun group.
Yeah.
There and
I'm gonna quick side
Do
note
it.
about basket cases. When I first moved out to this area and decided I wanted to play more disc golf and just started looking for places I could do that, I wound up I posted on Facebook like, where can I go? And somebody was like, oh, there's a league here. I didn't know it was called basket cases. I knew nothing. I just knew Sergeant Means was like a long drive, but I'm like, I'm just gonna go. I showed up and I was like, and I'd played in college, but I'd never seen a club. How many people were there? How excited everybody was. I was like, the camaraderie here is setting this new standard to me and what a club can be.
Yeah.
And actually, I've talked to some people about this, but after I went to the first Basket Cases club, that's when I thought I really want to have my own disc golf club. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to achieve what these guys have done, but like, it's a new standard in my mind.
I don't think there are many clubs that have what those guys have. It's not about the best scores. It's about the club, and it's about the camaraderie, which I hate to use, but that's the perfect word for it. And they just all come together, and that group is great. It's fantastic.
Basket cases
passionate.
are ride or die.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, Alex, because that was the same for me. My first league experience. Let me try to recall this here. I want to say, I could be wrong on the year, maybe 2013. I had played the Ice Bowl with J.D. Bly. That's a name you haven't heard locally around here in a little
Way
while.
back, yeah.
And he said, come check out this group. It's at Sergeant Means, and me and my brother Joe decided to go out, and my very first throw, I want to say it's hole 9 out at Sergeant Means, I hit the CTP, and it was for $13. It was one of my very first Instagram posts. This is why I recall all of this. But
Wow.
yeah, this is going back like 7 years, I think. It was 2013. So, yep, that was my first experience.
Huge shout out.
Yep.
Yeah. And in whatever ways, it shapes what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
That's what happens, like with clubs like that. So those guys are great. I'm sure we'll talk quite a bit more about them.
They'll be
at some
involved.
point, yeah. But also Crystal Lake Brewing, Putting League, Jim Clem, Donovan Livingston. Those guys are awesome. They put one on Wednesdays. I know they've got a couple weeks left, so go check them out if you're close to them. Those guys are fantastic. I can't say enough good things about Jim and Donovan, so go check them out. And then also Fox Valley is putting out a putting league on Fridays, and I think their season ender is on March 13th, from what we read at the Kickers Club over in Fox Valley. They've got a couple weeks left, so please go support them and all of them. Like if you're sitting at home
and you're waiting for the season to start,
any night,
the season's already happening.
Yeah, you're
it
doing
may
it
not
wrong.
be sanctioned, but get out and play disc golf and get involved,
please.
because there is no excuse.
Okay, so I think that wraps it up for Local Route then. I think it's time we get into the heart of this episode, which, as we said at the top, is called the Tourney Journey.
The Tourney Journey.
What goes into a tournament? It's so much more than your typical player probably realizes. Anybody who's put on a tournament before, this is going to be, standard common knowledge to those people. But if you've
maybe not,
and hopefully we shed some light for those people too. But for people who have never put one on, let's say you've only played, I think this will be a really informative segment for those people. Sean and Ryan and I talked before this all started about what does that checklist look like. And I bet a lot of people would say that the process starts in different places, but Sean, you really hit the nail on the head. I think when you said, if you want to put on a tournament, the very first thing you figure out is your intent.
Yeah, absolutely. Why are you doing it? Is there, for a lot of the stuff that I do, is there a fundraising effort? Is there a purpose? Is there things happening where you're trying to raise funds for incarcerated? Great example. Funding an entire course going in the ground. Is it just a sanctioned event where you're just doing that annual thing like Illinois State's? Not that that's a bad thing, but there are many different intentions when it comes to starting a tournament. Why are you doing it? So
it doesn't have to be for a noble cause. I mean, when you do have a noble cause, that's great, but it can just be I want to have a good time with the homies. It can be that.
It can be that.
I think a lot of annual tournaments have started out that way and have just grown to the point where if they weren't there every year, we would miss them dearly. And that's not a terrible way to start at all. At this point, I don't think you could find an open weekend, but if you wanted to fill a hole in a weekend with a tournament like that, that's a great reason to do it too. But whatever it is, I feel like there's got to be some kind of intent,
Yeah. Again, it doesn't matter. It doesn't exactly matter what it is. It just matters that you know what it is. Whatever it is, lay that out so that it guides all of your planning for every other part of this checklist. Needs to be able to come back to your sort of mission. Why are we doing this again? Right. Okay, good. That's going to guide these, when you have 50 decisions to make in the next, weeks or months that it takes you in the buildup, having the intent be clear, that's going to make all the difference in the world and what happens in the end.
Yeah, I mean, this is a conversation I just had with a local golfer. Shout out to Corey Simonich here in the shop a couple days ago, a guy that has played many events who I had no idea wanted to start running events. And he came into the shop and we talked for a couple of hours. And, we started talking about, when and where and why and all answering all of those questions. And, he thinks that there is a niche for, maybe doing some events at courses that don't really have events at them, like Shorewood and Round Barn, and navigating how we can create better relationships with those park districts so that can become a regular thing. So in a time where you would think that it's pretty concrete and who's going to run what, a guy out of left field that I would have just thought as a player seems to be wanting to get very active in the scene. So that's awesome.
That's filling a gap too, because we typically overlook courses like Shorewood, and we had used Round Barn in previous years, but we just don't seem to use it anymore. And it's because of relationships with the park district and things like that. But Shorewood, is a great course and it could use some love, and that could be, the kicker. That's what gets it started. Let's do it, Yeah.
I mean, Shorewood is a great example. I've had not only Corey, but also another shout out to head of the Birdie Babes, Amy Laskowski. Same conversation where she wanted to do, I believe it's a women's global event at Shorewood. I could be wrong. Sorry, Amy, but I'm pretty sure that's what she wanted to do. She reached out to the park district and they didn't know how to answer her questions. So we kind of have to navigate these things when dealing with these cities and park districts where we can't expect them to know how to handle this, because in some cases, like Shorewood or maybe like Round Barn, they don't realize that when we're doing these tournaments, all the money's going back to the community. So I think that they kind of have some rental fees and charges in place that are a little skewed from what we're attempting to do. And I think the more that we kind of knock on their door and explain to them what's going on, the easier it's going to become. And they're going to go, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, Amy, let's do this. Why would we charge you? Or kind of get involved and stuff like that. Like we saw with Casey Glade last year with Mayhem at Marilla in October, where she went to the city of Streeter and then just kept bugging them until the city of Streeter was like, okay, cool, we'll line you up with some local companies and
give you a bunch of money.
They added $2,500. I think.
Fantastic.
Wow. Yeah, covered a bunch of costs for the event. It was
once they realized what was happening.
Yeah. So
instead of giving you the standard, here's what it is if you want to rent the park,
right?
Which we could do if we wanted to have a picnic, under the pavilion. To them it's the same situation, but once you get that in their mindset and, get the wheels turning, I think that's a great idea.
Don't be discouraged. Understand that when you're going to the city, they don't always know what that is. So
yeah, that's a great example. You figure out what your intent is, and you've used this expression a bunch of times, the ripple effect.
Yeah.
Like you figure out why you want to do it and watch what happens, not just from like you sticking to your plan, but like everything that happens around that. It's, it's amazing. So, okay, you've got your intent figured out. You know why you want to have an event. The next thing on your checklist, what do you guys think?
We just show up to the event,
Yeah.
I think calendar check.
Yeah.
You got to take a look at when is it possible, especially in our area, where we can't play. It's hard to do tournaments year round. So when the weather's good, everybody's kind of on top of each other, trying to get like every weekend something's happening.
Yeah.
So the calendar check is like, what's actually like, when's a weekend that's kind of open? When can I do it?
Right. I mean, you've got to have almost a year's worth of forethought in that, and with the GJTS stuff that we do, and things like Clash, like we've got to have that a year in advance almost, in some cases to get those weekends. So, that's an extreme.
For 8 years, you had to get dates in October of the previous year, of the current year for the following year.
Yeah,
and
meaning from the Illinois State coordinator.
Yeah. I mean, so what Alex is referring to, the calendar, is reaching out to your state coordinator and giving him your dates. So the way that we do it with Mike Krupika is he just basically has like a Google Calendar type of thing where you enter your dates, and then you're entering in like a possible secondary date so that he could coordinate all of those things and get everybody their weekends. But sometimes it changes. Perfect example this past year. Here's a whole nother topic. We're taking over the Shanahan Classic, but we had to swap dates for Incarcerated and the Shanahan Classic because of some scheduling issues. So it's a huge part of figuring out what you're doing for a tournament. I mean, you can't start planning until you know what day you're doing it.
Or you can, and you're likely to experience pitfalls where
Right.
either nobody shows up to your event because they're all at this other event, or you piss off the person who's trying to have an event and you're like, and they've been working on it for a long time. They've gone through all the proper channels, and you just sprang up out of nowhere without checking with anybody.
Right.
And now,
and
you've
shout
ruffled
out,
some feathers.
shout out to Mike Krupika for figuring that all out and piecing it together. That cannot be an easy task. Like,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Awesome. And that's also not to say that, because when the calendar is created, then, you could be the guy that's waiting for the calendar to be created so you could see what weekends are left. Because there are still available dates now. I mean, that was something that I was talking with Corey about was, he's wanting to pick some dates for this year. And I said, well, talk to Mike and figure out what those available dates are for your C tiers and find out what is happening so you're not running against another event.
Speaking of C tiers, that's another thing on the checklist is figuring out, is this event going to be sanctioned? And obviously, if it is sanctioned, you have a lot more channels to run through. There's a lot more that goes into that. But of course, it doesn't have to be. And there's pros and cons. I mean, like, sometimes you can put on super righteous, unsanctioned events that are just about fun. And those can be some of the most memorable things.
Yeah. I think we have a fantastic mix of sanctioned and unsanctioned. Obviously, there are far more sanctioned events, and I think that's preferred. But when you take that break and you play something like Cash Days, run by, Ratchin and Hopkins and Eris, it's so much fun because the pressure's off. Those things like that. And Incarcerated.
And AMs get to play for cash.
Yeah, which is, something that doesn't happen often. So, having that mix and having I don't want to say the weight lifted off, but, not having to worry about your next ratings update and things like that can change your play. And I think you need that mix in order to be a better player. So,
100%.
Yeah, I've always thought with what we do with King of the Canyons, it was always going to be an unsanctioned event.
Perfect example. Yep.
Perfect example. For me, as much as I love the PDJ and I love sanctioned events and I love the parameters that they create, for some things I don't like to have to be stuck in a box with my decision making as a tournament director. I want to be able to say that 50%, the top 50% of the field move on, and I can't do that with a sanctioned event. So
and some of the top AMs now get to play with the pros and compete for the same money, which doesn't really happen.
Right.
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 So
from there, Once you know what your intent is, what's the calendar going to allow for? Is it sanctioned? Is it unsanctioned? I think the next good thing to move on to is your branding and like the promotional side that goes into it. I've seen plenty of events that I just didn't know existed until like the weekend it's happening because somebody decided to post on Facebook. And it's like, well, I wish I would have known about this 3 months ago, or like somebody should have made sure that we all knew about this. And it's easier said than done. I mean, that's a whole job in itself, is doing the, coming up with a great name, coming up with artwork for it, and then, being on top of promoting it. And that's partly why I added somewhere on this list, I'm not sure where exactly it works in, but working with like a crew where everybody brings something else to the table. I've found that, if you're good at organizing, it's rare that one person's good at everything. Like usually you get...
Unless your name is Ryan Fancher.
Unless your name is Ryan Fancher.
Ugh.
But like ideal world, you have a guy or, somebody you can go to that's going to hook you up with a cool logo, help you come up with a good name for it. And, once you have all that stuff, it's so much easier to start doing promotions. I mean, if it's not like concretely nailed down, you're going to have a hard time filling up your tournament.
Yeah, I think we've been really fortunate. And I say we, like, I don't consider myself a huge part of that until recently.
Who is they?
Yeah, right.
Who
whatever.
Is they?
But organically, the group that we myself, Sean, Thor, and Doc, Leo Borowski, have put together, like, it just seems to work. Everybody's got their thing, and we've been very fortunate that the events that we've been putting on have been popular enough and advertised well enough through places like the shop and on Facebook and things like that, that we don't need to go too far. But I know that a lot of other tournaments need to, and they do, and they still get it done. And that's, huge shout out to the people that can do that and go everywhere and fill those events that would otherwise not be. That's a huge, tough task.
It is, but I mean, like, when you are doing it really well, when you're operating like at the very high level, you get the thing where your events are selling out quickly.
Right.
Rather than like, hey, a post every day for the last week in the build up to a tournament, like we still have a couple spots open. That's going to happen, of course. But if you're really on top of your promotion and branding, like when things are firing on all cylinders, you get that result where like it's full way before you have to worry about it.
I mean, I've had that conversation with a couple of people, with some new groups. We talked about Circle One earlier. Scott Rangel, I've had conversations with him here at the shop about like how to successfully run an event. And the first thing I say to them is like, come correct, because the bar is getting raised, and I'm not tooting our own horn, but we don't mess around when it comes to tournaments in J-Town. So the bar is very high. And if you are going to run an event, and I think that's kind of where it stems from. Everybody wants to have that successful event because they're either a part of it or they see it happening and they're like, man, I want my piece of the pie, and I love it. Because
come and get it.
Yeah, come and get it. Like, that's the only way. So you just have to really come correct with what you're doing. There's no such thing as over promotion. Like, I am borderline annoying when it comes to events. Like, the whole, hey, 2 minutes or an hour, or like, set your alarms, like that matters because everybody has things going on. So I like to be the reminder guy. Like, it's not, hey, come to my event because it's going to be cool. It's like, don't forget, because I know how forgetful all of you are. So
disc golfers forgetful.
Yeah. So little shout outs on Facebook. There's no such thing as share that's why we have those pages. That's what, I mean, my God, we could have a whole episode about the use of Facebook within the disc golf culture and how big of a tool it's been for growing every single disc golf scene across the world.
I want to plug in something else that's not really on this little checklist we put together, but it's back to the thing about having a crew and like knowing sort of where your strengths and your weaknesses lie. I am, again, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I know my weaknesses and strengths. Like, I'm decent at promoting stuff. Like, that's somewhere that like I like doing it. So I won't even say I'm great at it. I just like doing it. But I am also not very good at organization and details sometimes. And so, like, one person that I've worked with to help make sure that any events that I've put on through Disc Golf Chicago, that those actually go well, is I've teamed up with Ishmael Ochoa from J-Town, and he's involved everywhere.
Everybody knows Ish.
But Ishmael is a guy who I know handles details. Like, he doesn't let anything slip through the cracks, and he's on top of like all our PDGA regulations, and like I could not have ever put on a sanctioned event if it wasn't for teaming up with the right guy. Feel it out with your crew. Who
absolutely. I mean, that guy for us is Thor Batchelor. Like, he is
he's a
knowledge
savant.
is deep, is so deep. And the same with Leo Borowski as well. I mean, it is so important to what we do that we have those guys that are Johnny on the spot. We can always great example, our pop-up event in Plainfield. I didn't have to think for a second whether or not Thor was going to be there with the trailer, with 18 baskets and setting up the course with a golf cart. He's there. Because that's where he excels, is like that type of thing, and the logistics of kind of setting things up. That's a huge part. Yeah. Huge part of it.
Yeah.
And the crazy rule book that is in his mind.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing, that the obscure that someone will ask, and I will not have the answer, right away.
I would need to look it up.
We'll look it up.
Not ever going to lie about it. I'm going to look it up in that book or on the phone.
But Thor's like, nope, this is it, and this is why, and here's where you find it, and there's your answer.
Every team needs that guy.
Oh, man, it's fantastic.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from there, let's talk about the registration process. How are you getting people to sign up for your tournament? There's a lot of different ways to do it, but it seems like the consensus here is DG Scene.
Oh, no-brainer.
Disc golf scene all the way.
Yeah.
Game changer.
Amazing website. Amazing.
Yeah.
You got to talk to us about that. I've never put on an event nearly the size of what you have done, so talk us through that.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I am not a tech guy at all. Like, when it comes to that type of computers or anything. So it may as well be my 86-year-old grandmother working with this golf scene. That's my computer skills. But anyways, they make it so easy for me to be successful. They have thought about everything. Any kind of variant that you need, t-shirt size, $5 ace pot, $5 CTP, they have thought about it. It is available for you to do, setting up a wait list, setting up divisions, capping those divisions. It is completely customizable. Just huge shout out to Disc Golf Scene. It's incredible.
I've used it before, but I'm kind of fuzzy on it. Do they have can you use it for free, or is there always a charge to use Disc Golf Scene?
I want to say that there is, so the way that you set it up is there's a couple different ways where you could either have the player paying those fees. So I guess to answer your question, yes, there is always a charge.
And it's like $1 something.
It's inexpensive. It's a couple of bucks per player. So you could set that up one of two ways depending on, again, the intent of your event is, is the event going to cover those costs for the player, or the recommended have the player cover the costs, because there is that convenience charge. We do have this great website. Like, it can't be free. There has to be a charge. I would never expect something like that to be free of charge.
And if you're complaining about the little charge from Disc Golf Scene,
if a couple of dollars is going to deter you from playing a tournament,
if you want nice things, you pay for nice things. Okay, so let's say, so obviously Disc Golf Scene is top of the list. If you're not going to use that, how else do you do it?
I mean, I know some guys that are still, they just had the J-Town Ice Bowl, and I don't want it to sound like I'm speaking badly about them, but they did in-person only signups and day of signups. They still had 30 some odd people come out. So the old way is still alive and well. It still works. I mean, if you have enough people coming out to your local league, like Jason Poole did. I mean, when he was here a couple weeks ago, he still had a decent amount of people signed up on his list.
I guess it just puts a little bit more work on you on the day of,
right?
To do it that way, which is not a big deal. But
it isn't a big deal. When you get big numbers, it becomes a big deal.
Right.
I actually just messaged this to the guys the other day about our event is almost full. Battle at Bush Park.
Yep.
And the sooner it fills, the easier it is for us.
Sure.
Because we now can have, the player cards and the sign-up sheets and sizes for player pack items.
Right.
And all of those things now can be organized. Whereas, day of sign-ups, that's rough.
You have to wing a lot of your decisions.
You have to wing, the decisions,
you're kind of
are all kind of made for
scrambling
you.
enough as it is, even with using Disc Golf Scene. the guy walking up that's like, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
Now what?
That guy's going to show up.
You're starting from scratch with, okay, all of the things that could be covered on a website in an about section that as a society we're pretty used to doing by now.
That's the expectation, I think, of the modern consumer, I'll say. Yeah. But also, I love that I've found so many tournaments through Disc Golf Scene that I didn't know otherwise, because if it's only promoted through some club's page, or there's so many events that I would never have known about unless I just went to Disc Golf Scene and was like, what's happening next weekend?
Yeah, you can search every event that's
or
on
I'm
there.
traveling. I'm going to be in Michigan next week.
Absolutely.
I wonder what's happening. I'll check out Disc Golf Scene.
Yeah.
It's really funny, speaking of Disc Golf Scene, I could be wrong on this, but I think that it just started as almost like a Facebook page for disc golf. Because I had a Disc Golf Scene profile from back in 2011, 2012.
Wow.
And then hadn't really thought about it for maybe a good 5-6 years until I started running my own events, and I'm using Disc Golf Scene, and then my profile was linked to what I was doing, and then I had the ability to go back and look at that profile and the awful decisions I was making in my disc golf bag and the discs I was choosing to throw.
It had all that stuff, like what's in your bag.
Yeah. So it was like a Facebook page for.
It was almost like a MySpace, hey, I'm gonna throw this, and this is in my bag, and these are the colors of my discs.
The list of aces that you had and stuff like that. Just the stuff you can nerd out on. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely come a long way.
Yeah.
Working with that website, I literally will message them and get responses within 5 minutes, breaking everything down. I mean, they are.
Awesome.
Pete, I'm drawing a blank on his last name, but he always gets back, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Taking events to the next level. Let's go to the next point on the list, which is budget. And there's a lot of things tied into budget. Mm-hmm. I mean, your players pack is going to be part of that conversation. Your trophies, your payouts. There's a lot, and there's a lot of moving parts when you start talking about budget. So one of you guys want to start walking us through, you're going to put on an event, you need to figure out money. Where does that start?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with figuring out how much you're going to charge, which is a little bit of a hot button topic lately. There's been some guys commenting on some of our stuff from maybe like an OG disc golf scene from the 90s and early 2000s that have been, hang on, wait, I was playing disc golf tournaments 15 years ago and it was $30. Why is it $50 to play? And my answer to that is that because things cost money.
It's 2020.
The only way to make events cool is by having money to work with. The only way to have money to work with is to charge people to come out to the event.
Well, and I think the only time I've ever heard that is before the event, and I have absolutely never heard anyone come up to us and say, this event was not worth the X amount of dollars I paid.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
In fact, much the opposite.
Yeah.
This was one of the best run events, or, this event in player pack items alone was worth the money, that kind of thing. So you got to take that into consideration. You got to spend money.
The player, it's going to come. I mean,
That's
and a rebuttal to that is always going to be, well, what about sponsorship money? What about outside money? And depending on the level of tournament that you're putting on, sometimes that stuff is available. I mean, speaking from my perspective, there are companies that I work with that are, their sponsorships help on specific events. So, that sponsorship, and it's a lot of work to go out and find companies that are willing to go yes to a $100 check or a $500 check or $2,000 check.
And you can't water that down sometimes. They do one big event. You can't go back to them and say, hey, but there's a bunch of others. How about more money? You
it's
can't
difficult.
do that.
Yeah.
Anybody who hasn't done that really cannot appreciate how difficult that job actually is. So my background is in sales and marketing, and I am selling advertising and sponsorships 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I can tell you that I've hired and let a lot of people go over the years who come in to the interviews, and they're like, of course I can do this. Everyone tells me, I can sell. And you go through the process of knocking on all those people's doors, giving them your offering. And let me tell you, it's way harder than most people think.
Yeah.
And sometimes, no matter how good your event is or how awesome the thing you have is, it all comes down to how you convey it. And you can have something awesome that gets rejected by tons of people because you don't actually have the knack to like put it forth in the right way, or like, the business savvy. I mean, there is so much that goes into just talking to somebody who might want to sponsor.
Yeah, I mean,
then,
what's the ROI for a company that gives you $2,000? How does that make sense for them? We work with huge shout out to Pollyanna Brewing Company, now with 3 locations in Lamont, St. Charles, and Roselle. Yes. My wife works for the company. Sorry that took so long, guys, but we love you. What we've done with them is we've had player parties at Pollyanna where we bring the people to the companies, and
that in itself is not easy to coordinate.
Yeah, and just being totally frank, sometimes works really well and sometimes it doesn't, because
the draw is sometimes just not there.
Yeah, you can't force people to come out to a player party when you're also asking them to tee off at 7 a.m. the next morning, when what we're asking you to do is come out and support a company where you're having a couple of beers or whatever, or you're just kind of at home getting into tournament mode and you want to get to bed early or whatever. So it's sometimes very easy, it's sometimes very difficult.
Yeah.
Every advertising or marketing venture is a gamble in some way, and the idea is to take smart gambles, and to get a company on board with taking a smart gamble on your event, that requires a presentation. It requires a good relationship with that company. There's a lot that goes into making it actually happen, and then delivering on it, and having them feel like, well, that was a good investment. Like,
the pressure of putting on a good event for the sponsors and not just the players.
Yeah,
that's a huge part of that.
Finding sponsors, that's a part of your budget, but like as we were saying, the figuring out how much do we charge people to get enough money to work with to make this event achieve the things that we want to achieve. You have to build in your players packs. Like where do you even start with what's going to go in our players pack?
That's always a subject of huge debate, and I think we do a good job, but we try and come up with something different every tournament, and we run so many that, man, it's tough.
The well gets dry.
Yeah, it's tough to reinvent the wheel with those, and you can only give away so many dry fit shirts before
everybody's got a drawer full of dry fit shirts that maybe they don't even wear, and it's like, okay, well, is that something that we continue to do? When, so
we try and mix it up as best as we can. This year, I think we're going to try and mix it up even more, to give players more of a variety of items, and it gives you more of an incentive to play every event. To get you got to collect them all, instead of just getting the same thing for every tournament. But it's difficult every single time. Yeah. And I think our community in general has responded so well. Everybody loves our what we do, and we've been really fortunate to have that. But yeah, it's still really tough.
It is.
And when you're figuring out the budget side of that, like I think a lot of people will gravitate to we can get dry fits made for this price. And like you tend to look at the things that are not very costly, because that means you can put on an event that doesn't cost the players as much, and that feels like a win. But I think a lot of the time you end up giving people stuff that they're just like, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, there's definitely got to be a quality aspect to that, which I think we've, again, done pretty well with. But yeah, it's a fine line. You can't have something that is going to cost the tournament so much money that, we run out of sponsor money, and we run out, like your whole event price goes into a player pack, which,
Yeah, and I mean, too, this kind of overlaps with a little bit of the branding that we talked about earlier. As much as I don't want to talk about the things that specifically I or we do, the Greater Joliet Tour Series, we were able to feel really good about giving out like 6 or 7 flat top DX rocks last year that, like, on the scale of what's cool for discs, like DX plastic is like the cheapest. But we kind of branded the whole thing as like it's a whole set, and it's cool to have, like, in my mind, that was my intent of like, let's have a whole set of like, I have every one of them on a shelf at my house right now, and I look at them on a regular basis, and I think it's the coolest thing. So like, I hope that everybody kind of thinks like I do, in that, maybe it was a $10, $11 retail value, but it's really special to me that I have a disc. Like, in general, you should at least have a disc for your event. Like, I have gone to events and I didn't get a disc, And I'm a grown man. Like, why didn't I get a disc?
Where's my toy?
Like I need to have that memento thing for me. And I wish that I hope that more people see that. I'd like to see more people like get that disc at check-in or at your player party. Have your card sign it,
dude.
Have your card sign it and hang it up at the house. Like, this is irreplaceable memories that we're having together as a community, as a culture, the camaraderie that, like, that to me is what matters. Like, having the disc to sign, having the thing that ties it all together.
Yeah.
Well, because I'm looking right now at how many different types of molds of discs at the shop here at Delwood. We're not going to pick the disc that works for everyone. We're not even going to pick the disc that works for 10% of the field. But we know that a lot of people aren't going to throw that disc or, even support that particular brand or whatever. But if we put a cool stamp on it, if we make the event memorable, if we make the stamp memorable, if we do all of those things right, people are going to want that stuff. And that's what we try and do with player pack items, create more of a value for all of that stuff.
Yeah, you want to walk away feeling like, well, that was worth my money. Either it's like a very high quality thing that's like, that is high enough quality to where I would have spent my money on that. Or it's unique enough to where, like, I couldn't have gotten this anywhere else. Absolutely. There's nowhere else I could have gotten this thing.
Right.
And now, there's the memento value.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's also, like, on the other end, you're probably going there, but not just player pack items, but...
Trophies?
Well, trophies, yeah, we can talk about trophies, but
go ahead.
I was also going to say, like, a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, like signs and sign holders. We're going through that right now with Thor, figuring out what kind of sign holders to put signs in for sponsors and things like that, and we don't want to make it look like, cheap, like a Xerox copy.
Yeah, paper and packing tape.
And that's another, that's another added value type of item that nobody would ever think of, but that stuff adds up. It's expensive. Printing the signs, the sign holders, you need a lot of them. They're not cheap, things like that, and we can reuse a lot of that stuff. But man, that is tied into the cost of every tournament. And so when you try and figure out that bottom dollar value, I'm sure you're missing a lot of that stuff. And it's got to be paid for.
Yeah. And I think also now more than ever, I mean, we're in an era where my package to sponsors is going to be stuff like this, shout outs in a podcast, social media posts. Yeah. Like, no longer do we have to say, well, you're going to have a T sign on this hole. Yeah. Because let's be honest, do the players really look at those T signs?
Depends. I mean, if you're plugged into the scene, you'll, like, for me, I imagine most typical players probably not. But if you are, like I had used the expression, a mover or shaker, if you help put events together, you appreciate what it takes to get a sponsor. And when you walk up to a hole and you're like, oh, snap, that company sponsored this? That's awesome. I wonder how I can support that business. Thank you to them for supporting us. But me and people like that are rare compared to everybody that plays the sport.
Because they're in the zone too. I mean, can you blame them? Like, they're teeing, they're teeing off. They've got tournament nerves, and I think the last thing that sometimes players are looking at are the company in small print on a sign. So,
and what we also want to avoid, and this will tie into some other topics later, but we want to avoid the expectation of players adding, sponsorships for T signs. Like, we want to create events where we have the sponsorship, we have the funds, we have everything, so that we don't have to say, hey, for $50 you can sponsor a hole. Well, I just paid $50 to enter. Right. Why am I sponsoring? Like, Joe so-and-so on hole 6 sponsored that.
Right. Like, shout out to everybody who's down to do that. Like, it's appreciated.
Absolutely.
But when we can avoid that, that's what we want.
And that that comes into, the amount of money that it takes for every player to play an event,
So there's a lot that's baked into that whole thing we just covered.
We could talk for 3 more hours about this one topic. Yeah. There's a lot to it.
But in general, just don't underestimate the process of figuring out your budget, because there's a lot to figure out there. And just know, if you want to put on a cool event that is remembered and that people look forward to next time around, it's probably not going to be a cheap event. Like, if your top priority is putting on a free event, you're going to have a very hard time making it kick-ass.
Right. Yeah. Or it's going to be like trophy only. Like, you could do $25 buy-in, but you're not going to have the funds. You could put all that money towards an awesome player pack and then trophy only, which there are clubs and people and promoters that do that. So, it's not to say that it can't be done. But again, first step, what's your intent? What are you doing? So, these are the things that you have to check off the list of.
Oh, and spoiler alert, tournaments don't make money.
Yeah. Yeah. Tournaments.
I think that's the number. Like, if you went to a tournament and you spent a bunch of money, like it was, I don't know, $100 tournament, and you walked away thinking, like, where did that money go? Like, did we get something awesome in the players pack, or like were the payouts sick? Or if you look around and you're just like, where did that money go? That's when you've done something wrong. Yeah. And I don't think that happens a lot. I think like if somebody's charging a lot to get into a tournament, it's because they did something awesome. Yeah. But
sometimes I guess
making money on these things.
Sometimes the question is asked and it's just dismissed just as quickly, because the idea that tournament directors and tournament coordinators are in it to make money is ludicrous. And some
if
do.
You were, God,
some can.
I mean, the PDG totally has it set up to where it's almost impossible. Yeah. To like the money has got to be.
Well, and HB Clark down at Bowling Green, is that his name? Yeah. Which is another event that is unbelievable. He has 700 players down there, just AMs, and I would be shocked if he was making much of anything. Yeah. Like, it's just so hard. And if he is, great. And you know what? Yes. He deserves it.
Yes. That's the other thing I wanted to say is, like, if you want people to bust their ass and put on great events, it's okay for that person to like be compensated.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would say that if there's any kind of evolution with all of this, I would say the PDGA needs to regulate it, but like there should be an itemized part of the budget on the PDGA site that says
that's interesting.
Any one tournament director can make up to X.
Yeah, that's I'm sure we could spend a whole show on that. Yeah.
But I think that would, if people's, the amount of time that you put into it, I mean, not everybody feels the same way, but if there was the added bonus of like, hey, I killed it, this event was great, and I was allowed to make $200 from it for my time, and the event was still amazing.
I worked on it for 6 months, and I made $200,
which is about 50 cents an hour.
But whatever. I think that is something that I don't know. It may help, it may not, but I think that maybe that's something.
I hope we get there because right now everything is completely driven by the passion of individuals.
Right.
But I would love if we got to a place where the sport was healthy enough financially to where people would, make money from doing great things.
You know what? Like, I am 100% happy after paying everything that needs to be paid for the tournament to actually function, give everything else back to the players, in the form of player packs and payouts and things like that, which is what we've been doing. And I think our payouts are far and away
probably
ridiculous.
Some of the best in the area. Pretty great payouts.
But I don't have a problem with that at all. Like, I don't need to make a dime.
No.
But I hope we get there someday.
So we have not. I mean, we've been talking about budget for a while. We still haven't really talked about trophies or payouts, but those are two more really important parts. Let's try and get through that quickly. I think trophies are underestimated so often, and I'm definitely guilty of that. I've been to a lot of events where the trophy that I get, I've only gotten like 2 trophies ever, but I've seen the trophies.
How good are you really, Alex? How many trophies do you have? Let's see your trophy shelf.
I'm enthusiastic.
Picks.
Listen, I have maybe 3 trophies, and I made one of them by hand, and I'm so embarrassed by it.
That needs to go up on Facebook for sure.
In the comments of this post.
Please comment it up.
It looks like an 8th grade, like maybe a 6th grade art project. It's bad, and I worked really hard on it. So, anyways, if you want something that people are actually going to be like, dude, I want that trophy, just because it's awesome, it doesn't just happen. You've got to talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, somebody who has the right materials, expertise. You need to give them time. You have to figure out what's it going to cost. Like if you're not budgeting for trophies, you're going to end up with something that no one's excited about.
Right. And I mean that ripples into so many, Johnny won MA3 and he does a social media post as almost all players do. And all of his non-disc golf friends and family see his post, and his trophy is a 3-inch diameter piece of wood with a marker
That's cute.
You know,
good for Johnny.
So, I mean, as we are expecting the outside world to take us serious, we have to take ourselves and especially our trophies, if anything, serious because it's being posted and talked about on social media.
Totally.
So, I mean, all the way down to like a 7-week league, I did trophies that cost a little bit of money, you know, because it's important. You have to budget for trophies.
And when you do that right, you get like the difference you get from spending on that and not spending in it, or knowing somebody who can just like you have a good relationship with, and they'll do, you know, they'll take care of you.
Yeah.
But like I've definitely been to events where I'm just like, hey, I'm here to have a good time, and if I play well, that's cool. But then I see the trophy, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna play my ass off. Like I want that thing on my mantle bad.
I mean, one of the things that I do tournament morning is like once Ryan shows up with the trophies, lay those puppies out, get them excited, get them wanting those trophies. I mean, we can dive into a whole thing about Tournament Central, but having that stuff out and available for them to see that we put in the work to make these for you. Not make them because we had to, as per a PDGA. You know what I mean? We went above and beyond for you.
Right.
And that's right when they walk up to Tournament Central.
So, yeah, build that into your budget. If you don't, you're going to end up with something that just nobody's excited about. Shout out to Ryan Fancher for making the dopest trophies. Okay, now there's only one last thing really, because squad is the last thing on the list, and we've kind of already covered squad. So the last thing is figuring out the schedule of the event. You can do that a couple different ways. I know you have a lot of experience there, Sean, by working with events that have tee times, figuring out. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. I can't even be the one to start that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, so you're going to have two schools of thought, at least, you know, with my experience. You're going to have a shotgun start, which is going to have you locked in to a certain amount of people that can play the event.
Sure.
You've got 18 holes.
Shotgun start means
everybody starts at the same time. First round, everybody starts same time, second round, or however many rounds you have. So if you have 18 holes and you want to avoid fivesomes or having a tournament take 14 hours, you want to have foursomes, well, you're down to 72 people total that can play the event for that tee time. So the other way to do it is by using tee times every 8 or 10 minutes like we have done in the past and now are doing for all of our local C tiers, which allows 30 more people to play?
Yeah, 112.
112?
Yeah, is what we're doing now, yeah.
Every 8 minutes. So we switch up what divisions start at what time. We have tee times that start at 8 a.m. It's not always the same division every time with the early tee time.
And I don't want to say it's because it makes our lives easier as tournament directors and assistants, but it does.
Right.
It allows more players. It allows us to...
in an ever-growing scene. I mean, it's not because, for any other reason other than we have so many people that want to play.
I think there's a lot of other benefits, too. I mean, getting more people involved is great, but, like, from the player side, when you walk up to the tee pad and it's your tee time and, I don't know, there's, like, a little more attention on you.
It makes it more special.
No,
for
it's
sure.
more
totally.
special, for sure.
Well, and just the timing issues altogether, like, if MA1 plays a little bit later, MA1 doesn't have to get up at 5:30 in the morning, which is great. And if you are one of those people, that loves to get up early and you're playing, one of the women's divisions or, MA40 or whatever, that tees off at 8:10, you can play 2 rounds and be done by 1:30 or 2 o'clock. And what? Yeah. That's unheard of. And that's fantastic. You've got half of the day, which is neither here nor there for a lot of people, but that makes a huge difference. And as tournament directors and, tournament assistants and whoever's helping out, having those cards come in 4 at a time instead of 90 at a time, everything else falls into place a lot easier. And I think everyone sees that and sees how much more smoothly it plays out. And I think that just adds to the whole value of what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, and you can have a 5-minute player meeting with 4 people instead of 200.
Where
you're going to have
10% of the people are listening.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
At most.
Yeah. So I get to look 4 people in the eye and go, this is the OB on hole 15. Yeah. Look at me. You hear me. This is what it is. And it's locked in. I know that they're not going to have any issues, which is, again, a huge part of running a great event.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And we kind of happened upon that almost by accident with our pop-up tournament last year at the Workforce Brewing in Plainfield. There was really not going to be another way to do it because with a pop-up event, no one had seen the layout. And the way the layout was, some of the holes were so far away that a shotgun start would have been prohibitive.
We would have spent 20 minutes explaining how to get to hole 12.
Absolutely. And so
to a group of people.
Yeah, and so having one card follow the route and then every other subsequent card follow them to, a pretty easy path all the way back around was a no-brainer. And then we realized that, wait a minute, now that we're doing tee times, so many more people can play.
Mm-hmm.
And it became, the obvious answer to the problem.
Let me ask an obvious question then. Why is it that so many, in my experience, most of the tournaments I've done are shotgun starts? Mm-hmm. Why is that sort of the go-to?
I think that's just I think that's just been the format. I don't want to say that it's right or wrong. It's just what people have done.
What we've expected.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe the tournaments don't necessarily fill, or the wait lists aren't big enough that it becomes an issue with
It's all
player
to scale too
quantity.
with the growth of disc golf in general.
Yeah. When you only have 60
players. For the
players,
last 30 years, other than some big events like GBO and Ledgestone and stuff like that, events aren't selling out in 10 minutes.
Right.
It's been the walk-ups.
How could you
it's
have
been all of this stuff.
Without disc golf scene and without social
Facebook,
media, just couldn't have
absolutely.
happened.
Right. So I think that's why. But as we're getting into the era of local C tier selling out in 20 minutes, we have to evolve. We have to figure out a way to have more people. So you can only do that one of two ways: play more holes or do tee times.
And more holes, especially earlier on in the season. Like 2 years ago, we played our first Tour Series event here at Delwood, and it was far dark before even.
We were wrapped up and going home at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it was rough.
It was
I mean,
rough.
for
that
everyone
makes it really
that got
hard
there at 6
for
a.m.
a lot of reasons. But I'm, I don't have a family yet. I mean, God willing, hopefully eventually. But I mean, even just with the wife at home, that's like, it'd be great if you got home at a reasonable time.
You were going to be home at 6:30.
Exactly.
It's 9 o'clock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes a huge difference. And for people who do have families, it's even bigger. Like, to know you could be done by 2. And
that's the difference between signing up or not.
Exactly. For a lot of people, 100%.
And the great thing on the TD end of things for tee times is that it is so much easier for me to do a little bit of work more often throughout the day than rush and do a bunch of stuff, wait for 2.5 hours.
Hurry up and wait. Yep.
And then get second round teed off, and then the bum rush at the end. So as we do it to where, as the divisions are finishing, we're doing award ceremonies and payouts for those divisions. Right. So by the end of the day, the last card that comes in is the last card for that division, which is typically MPO. And they're done. We do trophies, we do payouts, and we're done, instead of adding 18 or however many different scorecards and figuring out all that stuff.
Are you saying you don't love when there's 100 disc golfers staring at you,
hovering around the scoreport? No, it's my favorite thing in the world.
Well, the longer you stare at that scoreport,
it will change.
Oh, it definitely changes.
Your score gets better.
Change. Yeah, absolutely.
And the more questions you ask, the more strokes come off your final score.
Right.
Yes.
Beautiful thing.
Will the sarcasm come through?
That is an entire episode in itself.
An entire episode.
Take a photo.
Get away from it.
Walk away.
I swear I'm going to buy a tent, and we're just going to have the scoreport inside of the tent.
You think he's joking, but we are planning that.
I am not even joking.
We should start thinking about somebody that can act as a security outside the tent.
Absolutely.
A giant, scary person that doesn't mind.
Gary Murphy? Are you listening, Gary Murphy?
He watches enough UFC. Maybe he's picked up a few moves.
He's tall.
Yeah, he is tall.
He could do it. He would do it.
He looks scary.
What happened to that guy? Oh, he was trying to see scores early.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It would only take one as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You broke his nose. He just wanted to know whether
he wanted to look at his score for the 7th time.
But I think that something like that could add a little bit of it. Like, one of my favorite things with King of the Canyons is everybody kind of the coming in and seeing where the bubble is. Who's going to move on. So kind of not knowing where everything falls until that scoreport is brought out.
Yes.
I think is how it should be. You know, like, because then it's like, ooh, now we all know at the same time instead of the first card's in and they know more than the guys that are the last card, which, you know, who falls on those cards is totally random.
Right.
So it kind of levels the playing field a little bit.
Okay. I think we've covered the basics on the whole checklist. I'm sure we've missed some things, but I think we got the main things, and we probably got a little more in depth than we thought we were going to, but that's cool. So that's basically a wrap on episode 1. I mean, guys, thanks so much for listening. We're going to be planning to get another episode out within 3 weeks-ish. That's what we're aiming for. So, you know, we'll be posting about it in the meantime.
There's going to be plenty to talk about.
Please like, subscribe, share, like Ryan says, all those social media things you're supposed to do those things.
Follow along, please.
Next week's subject is going to be, or not next week, but next episode's subject is going to be a bit of a surprise, but as a little teaser, there will be a special guest involved, so keep an eye out for that.
Ooh, I have something that we can give a little teaser on.
Teaser.
So the very first time that we got together, about 6 days ago to discuss doing this podcast, we came up with a really cool idea that involves your local disc golf clubs. We're not going to give away too much information.
Still logistics to work out.
Still some things to work out, but I would say it's going to happen.
It's
happening.
Get your clubs wrapped.
Yeah.
You know,
start getting involved in your local clubs. Definitely
more details to come.
More details to come. Get involved in your local disc golf scene, please. It will matter.
Was that enough to get you mad, but not give you any information? Probably. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Exactly
and
what we want.
Another point is, if you have something you want us to talk about, if you have a guest you would love to hear on the show, drop us a message. In the next episode, we're hoping to introduce a segment called Mailbag, where we address specific questions that you guys have DM'd to us. So either you can post it as a comment or send it straight to us. Any one of our pages, Unstable, Disc Golf Chicago, Delwood, any of those pages, you have a question or guest you want to hear, get that to us. We would love to bring your thoughts and questions onto the show next episode.
Do it.
All right, we'll catch you guys next time.
We're out.
Later.
Peace.